Welcome everyone to another episode of Geek With Sneaks. My name is Mike, and I'm the Sneakerhead that talks game dev with the game devs. And today I'm joined by a very, very good friend of mine, someone I've worked with since he started at Ubisoft Toronto, and his name is Norm. Hi, Norm.
What's up, everybody? What's up, Mike?
What's up, man? Thanks for coming on. So Norm, he is a unique story. What I mean by a unique story is he didn't come into the gaming industry and game development in the most traditional way possible, which we will go over. But as of right now, he does work as a production manager. If you want to go a bit more in depth about that, Norm.
Hey, what's up? So, I mean, do you want me to just kind of start with, I guess, how I started? I guess that's probably the best way.
Well, maybe you could just briefly touch on like what exactly you do in your current role and title.
That's fair.
Just briefly, nothing too specific.
Sure. Yeah, no worries. So right now, I'm the production manager for the missions team for Watch Dogs Legion, and our team is comprised of myself. We have a coordinator as well. We have a bunch of level designers and level artists that are on the team, and then also we work with a group of programmers. They take care of ops tech, which is more sort of like the tech that supports our missions.
Cool. So as you can see, there's a lot of moving pieces to what Corm has to help coordinate and with game dev. And game dev is basically a bunch of moving cogs at one, all working together in order to project this one video game that we're all making together. So when I mentioned that Norm had a very unique path, or a unique journey to getting to where he is today, it's because he actually started at Ubisoft in another, I would guess, another team in a different field altogether.
That's true.
What field is that?
So I guess a lot of people are kind of surprised when I tell them this, but I started in the finance department of all places. It's kind of amazing, for lack of a better term, at least in my perspective, that I started from there and I kind of ended up here.
That's awesome. So I don't think you'll come by a story similar to this quite often. But Norm, what really inspired you to even join Ubisoft Toronto in general? Was it more so that you're just a gamer? Did you have any inspirations earlier in your life that kind of made you love games?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think as far as I can remember, I've always loved games. I remember growing up, my parents. I mean, obviously, I'm Asian, Chinese. Obviously. So my parents were a little more, I guess, traditional and strict in that regard. Where a lot of the focus is always like, hey, do school, play piano. I don't want to get into stereotypes too much, but like the ones that are pretty well known, I hit them. So I think, and then so whenever I go to like a friend's house and they had like NES, I would go crazy because I could never play this, and I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. I got a buddy like Mario 3, blew my mind. Mario 1, Duck Hunt. I'm just trying to think. I remember there was this game that was pretty impossible. Remember Cobra Triangle?
Yes.
That game was so hard. But anyways, that stuff was fun. Yeah. What else? Double Dragon. Just spending hours with different friends and just playing games and stuff like that. Those were the good times. And I think since then, then I got a Genesis later on. Anyways, long story short, basically I've always just been into games and interested in games. But I think again, just with this sort of more traditional upbringing, I never thought of game development as a career, right? Because I thought in my mind it was always two big pieces, which were art or programming. I remember I tried programming in high school. It just did not make any sense to me at all. And I'm like, yeah, that's not an option. And then I remember growing up, I would try and draw and stuff. But again, I never felt I was really that good. And I never really pursued it. again, parents like, don't spend too much time on art. You should focus on math. It's like, okay, fine. So I think that's definitely it. So anyways, so again, with the stereotypes, I ended up taking business, and then just going into like finance and accounting, and that was where my profession, or I guess my career, was leading me. And I remembered when the studio started, I remember it was like an announcement from the government of Ontario. They're like Ubisoft is coming to Ontario, and then in my mind I'm like, holy shit, that's awesome, because I remember up until that point there weren't really that many like big name game studios in Ontario. I think there was like Silicon Knights, I think, was the biggest one at the time,
and Rockstar.
Right. But I think Rockstar, because they were like a satellite studio, they weren't as like well known at the time. Anyways, and I remember at the time, like when I heard that announcement, I'm like, oh man, it'd be so cool to work there. But at that point, I was going back to school just to get more sort of like I guess like accounting courses and stuff under my belt, so I could get my certification. And I was like, I can't program, I can't draw. What would be the point? Like, I'm not even going to apply there. So anyways, and then a few years passed, and I remember at the other job that I was having at the time, I was at a construction company in the finance department, and I think I was just getting really sort of fed up with things, and I was like, you know what, I need a new job. And I remember on a whim, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go see what Ubisoft is up to. Maybe they got to have something. Like at this point, like, I'm a little older, a little more mature, so I'm like thinking like, okay, they probably have like some support positions or whatever they got to fill. And I looked, and miraculously, like that weekend when I checked, there was a position in the finance department. And then so like immediately I applied. And I remember at the time too, like my wife was in school and I was the only one working. So I was terrified, because I was like, oh shit, like what if I jump and like she's still in school and blah, 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 like all this stuff. Right. But she was like crazy supportive. It was awesome. And she was like, you know what, like, I know you want this, like, this is obviously for you, like, just do it. And I'm like, all right, cool. Anyways, so I went in, I met with Frank, he was the finance director, he was super cool, probably, honestly, like, the best interview I've ever had, because it wasn't an interview, it was just us kind of just shooting the shit, like, it was pretty great. And I remember we ended up just talking about, like, our love of games, and I think that just helped me realize like what a special place the studio would be to work, and I guess that's kind of how it went from there.
That's awesome, man. And I feel a lot of it, like you were saying, talking to Frank is one of the nicest, coolest guys. He's an avid gamer too. That's just part of the whole studio culture, right? That's usually that we try to build, at least where we are, and it just in general, just through networking with other people across the industry, it seems to be the consensus. It's like that is the similar culture in terms of being able to openly talk to people and really share and have really good conversations with. And doesn't always need to be like just about game dev, right? It's just like you said, just shooting the shit.
It's really cool. Great.
So how was that transition coming from finance into production? Because I remember when you told me that, hey, I'm applying for a position in production, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And I'm curious, like how was that process for you to really go from working in finance 5 days a week to now just doing production related stuff?
It's funny because it's been such a, in my mind at least, like it's felt like such a long journey. And I think the older I get and the more I do certain things, like I know it sounds cliche, but everyone's always like, hey, stuff happens for a reason. And I feel like that's actually really true, because anyways, so when I first started in the role, I remember I'd reached out, I think probably like a year prior, to like our HR partners. So shout out to Nargis. I don't know if she's going to see this, but she was instrumental. But she was super cool, and I was like, hey, you know what? Like, I think the thing is, like, again, I've always loved games, so I've always wanted to be like a part of making them, just to help, shape them in what way I could, to just contribute, just to make the thing just to work with cool people that have cool ideas, and then ultimately make a thing that hopefully like lots and lots of people will enjoy, and it'll resonate with them, right? I think that's a really cool thing to be a part of. So I remember I asked her, I think I was like, hey, is there anything for someone like me in my position? Like, again, can't draw, can't program. What can I do? She was like, oh, you can maybe start as a coordinator or something, but I'll let you know if something opens up. I'm like, cool. And then she approached me later. I'd completely forgotten about it at this point, and she was just like, yeah. There's an role opening up. You should, you should interview for it. I'm like, all right, cool. And again, so obviously we know what happened. But yeah, shortly after that, I started as a production coordinator on Watch Dogs 2. And transition-wise, I think, as far as transitions can go, like I think it was pretty smooth. It was just nerve-wracking because it felt like I was jumping from a world that I was pretty familiar with and comfortable with into something that was pretty foreign, I think, all things considered, right? Like, I mean, playing games is one thing, but then like making the games and like all the tech involved, and there's a whole new bunch of like jargon, understanding what like all the different roles are. Like, I'll be honest with you, even at this point, like there are some roles where I'm just like, I think I understand what you do, like on a very surface level, but I would love to at some point like dig in more to like specifically what so and so does to help really bring this thing together. So I think, anyways, so it was a huge learning process, and I think with myself, I tend to be a little more like cautious with things. So just kind of like baby steps, just kind of figuring out how I fit in with everything, and just kind of going from there. But yeah, that's
it could be quite intimidating too, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, right. Like, you have these people who've been doing this for like 20 plus years, and then I'm like, excuse me, sir. So this task that you have, like, it just felt so weird. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like that people would just like constantly just tell me to just F off, basically, all the time. I think that's my biggest fear. Like who is this guy? But honestly, like, everyone was super understanding, and super cool. I think, again, like, I think I've never had anyone be impatient with me. I think as long as I sort of approached it with like a hey, like, I think this is what it is, but like, obviously, like, more than I do, like, maybe you can just help clarify things for me, or help explain this to me, and then we can just work on it together.
I think that's one consistent thing that I've been hearing so far on the episodes I've recorded are how important soft skills are in game production. It's so important, because you could be the most talented programmer, artist, whatever it is, but if you can't communicate properly and well with others, it's very detrimental to not just yourself and how you're building your own, experience within game production, but also it's detrimental to the game production itself, right? So that's something that's super important. And knowing you, since you've started over at Ubisoft, like, I don't even need to question your soft skills. You're one of the easiest people to talk to. You know how to approach people, even in stressful times. You understand how to communicate politely as well, because game production is stressful at times. But yeah, that's something that's really important. So I'm not surprised how I guess, I'm not gonna say easy, but how what's the best word? I could edit this out, but how, okay, not simple, but how quick is quick the right term to use for your transition? Or
yeah, I guess so. I think I mean, yeah, I guess all things considered, like, it can be considered quick. Like, again, it was just like, just dive in. The car's already hurtling down the highway, right, at like 120, 130, and it's like, you just get on board and just go, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's also understanding that, like, it's like I don't know, we'll go with this car analogy for a sec, but like, it's like, like, you ever been on like a road trip with some people that you don't really know super well? I think it's knowing to, like, when you can kind of not push things, but like kind of like joke around a little bit, push people's buttons for a little fun. But then also at the same time, don't be a dick, right? and then just try to be sympathetic, or actually most importantly in my opinion, just being empathetic, I think sometimes to what some people are going through, and then just kind of go from there, right? Like you want to try and keep that harmony, keep the peace, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are a lot of different personalities we really experience in game dev, and they all vary for sure. Well, we'll definitely go more into that topic. But before we finish off, in terms of your transition, do you feel like were you equipped with tools coming from the finance background to help transition you into game development and game production?
I think for the most part, I'll say yes. I mean, we use a whole bunch of different projection tools. I mean, maybe you've talked about this in the past with some of your other guests, but like Jira, obviously a very popular tool. But I think on the production side, like, again, we're just using a lot of Microsoft Office stuff, which I was pretty familiar with. And I think the two biggest, I guess I'll call them tools that I use every day is really like being able to communicate. So again, like unfortunately that's emails a lot of the time. And then just being, I guess the word is organized, for lack of a better term. But just knowing like where like your team stands, where their work stands, and then being able to reach out to other teams to be like, hey, can you support us with this? Or like, hey, we're going to use your thing over here. We're going to have a review about this mission. So, I'd like to invite you here, to the review, so you can kind of take a look at how, these pieces fit together, and et cetera, like that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think the biggest things are really just communication and organization. So I think, coming from a finance background where everything is very, let's say, regimented, I think definitely helped a lot.
For sure. No, absolutely. These are core skills, right? It's not something that's beneficial for someone in your position, but just anyone working in game dev, right?
Yeah.
For instance, me, like over the past few years, I am an animator by trade, but the skill I've been utilizing the most are my Excel skills. Like my Microsoft Office skills are on point.
They're on point.
They're on point for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen your spreadsheets.
Oh, thank you.
Beautiful.
Coming from someone from finance, that means so much. That means so much.
Legible, easy to read. Anyways.
Absolutely. So
yeah.
You say you started off as a PC production coordinator, and then eventually now you're in a position where you've been promoted to a production manager. Can you maybe briefly explain some of the core differences between the two roles, or if there really is much of a core difference?
Okay. I'll try my best. I think, okay, so I guess I'll be honest. Like, I think the production coordinator in many ways is kind of like almost like a catch-all job title sometimes, or at least that's how some people view it. I don't view it that way, but anyways, for a lot of things, I think it's definitely like a very good sort of start, or like first step, right? So I think even across our project, when I was a coordinator, I think we had 6 coordinators at the time. And I think generally coordinators are supporting and assisting the production manager, and then also the team that they're, essentially assigned to. And typically would have coordinators for teams that are just a little bigger, and just have a lot more sort of complex, issues that they need to coordinate, for lack of a better term. And I think for me, myself personally, like I think, I started on the current project as sort of like a general production coordinator, and then as the project evolved and then as needs evolved, I definitely got more specialized, which is, in my opinion at least, like the better way. Because like when you're a general project coordinator, like again, like I've done all the work, so I know what it's like, and I'm not saying it's not important, it's very important. But at the same time, like, if you're organizing travel for people, or lunch meetings, or team spirit, general team communications, organizing team meetings, like all that stuff is super important. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, it's like, if you want to grow in the role, in the career, like it's always best if you can, try and get specialized into a certain, say, discipline, right? So I think once I started working directly with the missions team, so I was a coordinator first, like I think that really helped a lot, right? So then I could really just focus on supporting like a smaller team of, say, like 10 to 20 people versus like 300 people, right? And it's been really cool to just get to know these guys and gals a little better over time, and just see the work that they're that they're doing, the stuff that they're going through, helping them with that, and really just really getting how do I say this, sort of like your hands on in more ways, with the content itself. I think was really cool. So just a step back for a sec, I was also the sort of, I guess call it general production coordinator for Watch Dogs 2. And while I'm really proud of the team that worked on that project in Toronto and the cool stuff that they made, I think my biggest, I guess I'll call it disappointment with myself, was that at the end of the project, like while I supported the general team with like a lot of different things and just a little more on some things, like I think I was disappointed in myself that I couldn't, say, like load up the game and be like, and tell someone, like, I don't know, my wife, for example, be like, hey, I worked on that thing, and I could tell her, the story behind that. And I think that's definitely changed a lot in this project, and I think that's been really satisfying.
That's awesome. I think what you hit it bang on with being able to specialize it. Because what that does, at least in my experience with working with my own production managers, is it by having a PM that's dedicated to that team and specializes in that field, they're able to help you not just coordinate, not just manage all the tasks and talk to people that's interdisciplinary, that requires interdisciplinary collaboration, but it also allows the PM, it allows them to have to help make a decision. Production wise, because they know the content, they know exactly what the end goal is, and they're familiar with it too. Whereas if you have more of a general PM PC, they don't know the material too well. They can help you with managing the task, but in terms of helping to make not just a production decision, but that also incorporates what the actual content is. Let's say for animation. I found that with more experienced PMs that are specialized, I found it easier to work with them because it didn't always feel like as the lead, I'm not always the one making the entire decisions. I have a good support staff with me that will allow me to help make the best decision from both a content quality side and also a production side. So I really value people, like you in your position that make game production so much easier. I also offload a little bit more stress on the PM. Because we're all in it together.
Right.
But I feel that's something that's super, super important is when you have the proper production support from PC, PM, and producer, it just makes things so much easier. It makes it feel like you're not in this alone, because a lot of the times during the project, our project that we're on right now, there have been moments where I'm like, I feel like I'm alone, and it's when I start working closer with my producer and my PM, it's like it feels like, hey, I have the support staff to make the right decisions, and it's less burden on me because I'm trying to handle my team, but also trying to handle a lot of the other decisions I need to make for the team, and just making sure that I personally put a lot of pressure on myself, even though people tell me not to, but this is where I've had talks with my former PMs and my producers, and then we just talk it out, and they just really guide myself and the team to make the best decision possible. So we value you, Norm.
Thanks, buddy.
You're crucial.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree. It's like I think, things can definitely get a little hairy sometimes, and I think. I guess the way I always approach it, and it seems like you do the same, is really just like, it's like, we just gotta talk this out, Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you're right. There's no there's no one person that has all the answers, let alone all the right answers, right? So it's really just trying to figure out the best way for everything, and just making sure that more or less everyone is on the same page. Yeah, I'd say that's probably like a huge part of it, as you know.
Absolutely, man. And doing stuff like missions, imagine all the moving parts in a mission. So let's try to let's try to break down like a mission, a general game mission. Right? Okay. Like, regardless of the game you're working on, it requires, first of all, an actual, I guess, a sequence of what would you call that? Mission beats, or just
mission beats.
And that is handled by what, like the mission designers, I'm assuming?
Yeah. So we so at Ubisoft we still call them level designers, and they if they own the space in the game, obviously they're designing that. But again, the for our game specifically, like a lot of the stuff that they're focused on is really just like the scripting of the mission to get your players from like point A to B, and just coming up with these like really cool scenarios that they think might be fun, or action packed, or etc.
Cool. So you have them, the mission designers, aka level designers, that handle the missions. You have the narrative side of things because every mission should have its own, of course, narrative as well. So you're talking with writers, you're talking with potentially the audio team as well, and the directors behind, narrative directors and all that, mission directors. So I already listed a bunch of people right there. Then you have to talk with the level art team to make sure you have all the proper assets. Everything is treated the way that it needs to for that specific level. Then you have, I guess, you're working with like an AI team, programming team to make sure that the AI is doing exactly what they need to do. And you're working with guys like me, the animation team, to provide you guys a lot of the content in the level that happens, whether it's a scripted event, whether it's people talking, whether it's, hey, I need this Y interact to happen here. So that's already animation. Then you have to work with potentially the UI team as well. Guys, see, this is stacking up, right? And then you have to work, especially like this team, it needs so much more recognition, the QC team, to really make sure that your mission is working.
Shout out to our QC homies.
Absolutely, man. Like, they're not just game testers at the end of the day. They're making sure that the level works. It's not buggy. They're quality control at the end of the day. QC, quality control, and they're making sure that it's up to our level, and they always keep guys like Norm, myself, aware of anything that is really detrimental to the quality of what we're trying to deliver. I'm sure I missed more people too. I'm sure there's like production level wise, like there's the other producers you have to work with, but think about all these people that need to help deliver one mission, and like the amount of coordination required, the amount of collaboration, coordination, the CNCs for me is super important, because one very risky thing in game development that I've discovered, I'm sure you will agree with, is that we can all know our role. But if we all work too independently, we're not like, we know this is the goal, but without cohesion between like someone to help coordinate and manage all these moving parts, we might not be delivering. We'll think we understand what the goal is here, but if we're not working together and figuring it out, then we might just deliver things that are to expectations of everyone else. And we need aligned direction, aligned expectations, and the production support is key, absolutely key to delivering that. And so there's a lot of, so you can only imagine all the work people like Norm have to really put into making sure like quality is delivered for especially for missions, because that's what at the end of the day, games are just full of missions, like tasks for the player to do, right? I feel that's really important.
So that was a very comprehensive list. I thought you were gonna throw it to me as a test, but I'm like cool. I'm glad you did it.
I know my production stuff too. I've been talking to a lot of people.
Listen, I know,
You
I
talk
know.
a lot.
You flexing. Um, but I think actually, so two comments to sort of to ride on those coattails. Uh, Big shout out to the cinematics team
Oh, I forgot
for our
that.
project, who've been doing. Like, can I swear?
Yeah, you could swear.
Oh, sick. But they've been doing a bang up job from start to finish. Like every time we see sort of like the polished cinematics, even when they're work in progress, and you're just like, damn, okay, yeah. Like they really help to just establish sort of like the mood of that moment, and just really just highlight some key like narrative moments, right?
Hmm.
Just get you right in the feels sometimes, which is really cool. And then also the other thing, like with QC, especially, like I think traditionally a lot of people are like, oh, QC, like, they're just playing video games all day, blah blah blah. But like again, shout out to QC homies. Like I feel like these guys don't get enough love and attention sometimes because again, it's just like, oh, they're just playing the game. But it's like it's so much more than that. Like I work really closely with my QC team, and they're communicating with me constantly. They're like, hey, this thing is currently not working right now. There's a workaround for this, and blah blah blah. And like this is just helpful on a day-to-day level. But it's even more so when we have like big reviews coming up, and we have like a big demo that we have to deliver, for E3 or something like that. And just helping me stay on top of that stuff. And then most importantly, I'd say is that like these guys, they're literally playing the same content every day. So you can imagine, like, if I had to do that, I couldn't, right? I'd just be like, oh my God, this mission again, as much as I, love our content.
Hmm.
But these guys know the content more uniquely, arguably, than anyone else because they play it so much. They and these guys are all, I know, like pretty hardcore gamers themselves, so they have a lot of good sort of like game input, like whether it's like player feel or like they're like, oh, the story seems kind of weird here, or the controls kind of they don't feel so great here, or like, hey, maybe if we spawn these enemies like starting from over there versus here, or like maybe there's too many ways, just that kind of stuff, right? Just good general game feedback. Like
Hmm.
I think a lot of people just need to start listening to the QC team more in that regard,
Hmm.
because obviously they deeply care about what they're working on. So
Hmm.
like have them in your reviews, have them talk to your designers or people who are making these features. Like take their input into account. Like it's super important.
Absolutely. And you see a lot of these, a lot of the people in QC, they at times eventually transition into a level designer, a game designer. We've seen it happen a bunch
Yeah.
of times over at Ubisoft, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and I think something that you really need to appreciate the value of them. It's
For
the
sure.
moment you need that support and you don't have it, you realize, oh crap, I really need this support right now.
Right? Yeah,
Seriously.
for sure.
So shout out unsung heroes, honestly.
Yeah, always.
Uh, so yeah, coordination it's huge, right? Like we understand all the cogs that require the game to function, but with that comes also managing the deadlines and the planning that's
Yeah.
involved with game production, right?
Mm-hmm.
Typically, we have our own milestones. I think milestones are a pretty universal planning method in the games industry.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to actually planning each milestone, how do you feel that is also another stressful part of being a PM as well?
Um, yeah, yes and no, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, in general, with the project, you're like, okay, you can just cut the. Sorry, I'm kind of talking at a bunch of
It's fine.
different points. Okay, let me collect. Okay, so I find that the best way, at least in my experience, and I know, for example, like my manager does this, but the best way I find is to just kind of like look at where you're supposed to ship and like all of the milestones that you're supposed to hit, and then just work backwards
Yep.
from there. And that's usually arguably the best way.
Yeah.
And then planning your milestones from there. is relatively easy because you can be like, okay, we need to hit these kind of like broad like quality levels. So for example, like this and mission are supposed to be this certain level of quality, this level of quality, everything's supposed to like hit the same level of quality at the same time. But again, because it's missions and there are so many dependencies, that's a fun word that people like to use a lot these days. There's so many dependencies that we have, again, like narrative, so writing the script, audio, recording the VO, cinematics, getting those sweet cinematics in, gameplay animation, UI, if we ever need some exotic UI for certain things, tutorial tips. And again, I'm not listing like everything, but like those are like pretty big pieces that we need in there. And then just making sure that you work with those other teams, again, usually like their leads and production managers, just to try and sync up everything at more or less the same time. And again, with game dev, as you know, being so dynamic and ever shifting, it's really hard.
Oh, sorry, it's really hard sometimes, is what you said?
Yeah, sorry, Mike.
Yeah.
It's just so loud in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just really hard sometimes. And again, it just requires so much communication, and it's just really easy, like you said, just to be like, okay, this is my team, this is the work we're focused on,
Yeah,
etc., etc., and then just hope, I guess is the good word, that the stuff that you've requested is gonna be delivered by a certain day. But again, communication is really important. And I think trying to understand that, maybe if you're asking a team for something, you're not the only one asking for something. There could be other teams asking for them for different things, right? So again, it's working with those people to be like, okay, like I know we're not the only people asking you for stuff. Like let's figure it out. Let's figure out this plan together. And I think that's saved my butt a few times.
That's actually something I was gonna touch on as well. Yeah, let's say I talk to Norm and I say, hey, what we want to do this for your mission, but at the same time you're trying to juggle 5 other things that are a different priority level, and I feel a lot of the things that both myself, Norm, everyone in like at a managerial level in game production need to really manage in themselves are the priorities, right? Because there are going to be different levels of priority for things that are going to be needed. So one thing that I really had to learn on this project was understanding how to manage priorities, especially when I feel, let's say, something for me is like the highest priority, then I talk to the team that's going to help me make it, and they're like, hey, sorry, we have like 3 other priorities that are bigger than this in our opinion. And it's like, great. Now as a manager for my team, how do I then shift things around? Because if this team, let's say the programming team's like, hey, sorry, we can't get to this for the next like month. It's like, okay, well, this is a priority for us. Then this is where you have to really communicate with producers, directors, and see, hey, how can we deliver what we need to deliver from my team by this date, and see how, let's say, the programming team, since they're a dependency, can support us, right? So that's the type of communication that is essential in game production. Is not always thinking, hey, my stuff is the most important. No, it's like there are it's all relative, right? Everyone's priorities are all relative, and you have to also understand from externally from that team that, hey, you know what? Objectively, what they have that's a higher priority, what they have over my stuff that is a higher priority set by them, in fact probably is, right? So you really have to kind of accept a lot of these I guess I would say decisions that are going to happen during game production, and not get too do your best to not get too stressed out about it, and find the biggest. Okay, I almost said this is the biggest C word, but contingencies. right?
Yeah.
Contingencies are so important because like you said, game dev is so dynamic. Things are always changing. If your plan was to do this, get from point A to point B and deliver it this way, things are gonna happen on the way there. You're gonna hit you're gonna hit a snowstorm. You're gonna hit, or in Canada you would, you're gonna hit a flat tire. Things are gonna happen there, and it's like, okay, how can we now pivot and do our best to deliver the same quality, but given the circumstances, how can we now get there within the same amount of time?
Yeah.
And that's something that's crucial in planning, in planning for game dev, regardless of your position, whether it's a PM or whether it's a manager or lead for a team.
Yeah, I find that the things that have I guess saved me mentally, let's say, are just to understand that you need to be flexible pretty much all the time, and that, again, you don't want to battle with people. That doesn't make any sense because you're all in this together. But like, don't battle, discuss. And I think the other thing too is that, like, just basically expect things to never go the way you expect them to.
Mm-hmm. Right?
Like, I know there's definitely some people who are just like, oh yeah, like, no problem. This is straightforward and this is smooth sailing, blah, blah, blah. It's like, nah. I mean, that's a nice dream, but, like, let's be real. That doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Very rarely.
Right? So I think, like, again, like, I'm not saying don't plan, like, always plan. But again, be realistic about your plans. Be realistic with the people that you're speaking to. Speak honestly, respectfully, obviously. But and just to more hit on your point that you're saying, it's like, yeah, you're right. It's like, you think your stuff is always the most important, but you know what? It's not. And then so you need to work with other people to figure out how that's going to fit in. And then at a certain point, it becomes kind of like a negotiation, right?
Yeah.
And then basically, if you realize that, like, hey, this other team can't support you with this thing, then you have to go back to your team and be like, hey guys, we're probably not going to get support on this, or at least to the level that we expected originally. Mm-hmm. So we need to maybe, like, scale back our expectations a little bit. So again, that's like, speaking to directors mostly, to be like, hey, this small part of your overall vision, like, maybe we can't hit that. Is that okay? And then, sometimes they'll challenge that too, which is totally fair. And then really it's up to you to work, again, with your team. So it's like a lot of back and forth, right? Just to figure out what works best for everyone.
Well, that's a collaborative process of game dev, right? Let's say you bring it up to the director's like, no, we absolutely need this is key. And then you have to talk to producers and say, hey, like, we need, like, this director is saying we need to deliver this, but unfortunately our dependency is on this team, but it's not on a priority, doesn't fit within this milestone. And then that's where they have to then coordinate with that team that's a dependency and say, hey guys, like, the director really wants this. Is there anything we can do to shift things around? And that's where it becomes the whole iteration, or the whole loop, game dev loop of figuring out, okay, so the end goal is we need to deliver this by this date. How do we do this as a team? And that's where game dev can be tricky, can be stressful, but dude, it could be satisfying when you see the end result as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%.
So with working with all these people, trying to plan all these things, right? And how I just mentioned the negotiation part of things.
Yeah.
They're also everyone are gonna experience a whole range of personalities. Right, you'll have people that are easygoing, reasonable, of course.
My favorites.
Those are the easiest people to talk to, but
sure.
It is never and anywhere are you going to see that to be the consistent personality or characteristics of people, right? Everyone, there are different personality types. We do training at work to understand the different personality types we will experience and how to communicate effectively with them, right? So, when it comes to managing personalities, how does that relative to the other stresses of coordinating things, planning things? Do you feel like when you need to talk to someone, do you just already kind of like in your head say, all right, I need to be gentle with talking to this person, or change the way you directly interact with them?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think yes, for sure. I guess the I'm just trying to think of different past scenarios.
Yes.
Yeah, I think ultimately you need to be sensitive to other people's sensitivities. I guess is the best way of putting it.
Empathetic was what you said, right?
Yeah, empathetic. Yeah. So, and again, it's like
Sorry, lost you, Norm. One sec.
don't like you.
Can you repeat that last line? I just lost you for a bit.
Oh yeah. No, I was just gonna say like I don't remember who said it, but I remember I guess I read some quote somewhere and it just really stuck with me once. But it's like you never know all the invisible battles that someone is facing every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you can, not you can't, but you shouldn't just come at someone sometimes just be like, yo, you're not doing this, you're not doing that right, blah blah blah. Like that's absolutely the wrong way. I think you need to take a personal interest again from this role in what the person is going through potentially. Because being creative is really hard, and again, being creative is only one aspect of it. Like oftentimes, like our teams are sort of struggling with like the tools they have, or like the different tech issues and that kind of thing, tech constraints. And I think understanding those, listening to them is a really big part. But again, it's like you have to take all these things into consideration, in addition to their personality and just maybe how best they would respond to certain types of feedback. And oftentimes too, it isn't what you say, it's how you say it, right? Which I try to, I guess, live by, because it's very important to me. So I imagine it's often very important to other people as well. But yeah, so that's a really long-winded way to answer your question. But yeah, basically, it's like you have to take other people's sensitivities into consideration. But at the same time, sometimes if you need to have like a serious talk about something, like you need to have a serious talk. I mean, we're all adults, right? So yeah, it's definitely a big part of it.
Norm, just 1 second. I might ask you to restart your video because you froze.
Oh no!
Your video froze. So I didn't want to interrupt you because it was an awesome little tidbit.
No, that's cool.
I can edit this part out. This part out about reconnecting.
Okay.
The face you had was this.
Oh no! Zombie mode.
Yeah, but no, that was that's super important. Because when I first started as a lead, the most challenging aspect of transitioning to a lead position is people management, right? I say that. Well, I think that I could talk to people pretty well. But when it comes down to stressful moments in production, your emotions will change, their emotions will change, and how do you really make sure that your impact as a lead doesn't really reflect on the rest of the team, right? Because I mentioned it on another episode that your emotion, I'm not going to say it's like a baby that absorbs stuff, but when your team sees you reacting a certain way, it almost allows them to react the same way and feel like, oh, it's appropriate to react this way,
right?
So sometimes like it's very top down in terms of like if you see your director really pissed off, then like in a way like I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm getting pissed off too. This is annoying because sometimes you share the same sentiment, and then the rest of the team kind of like it filters down to them, and then it just So you have to be very careful with managing your own emotions, not just understanding how to effectively communicate with someone, but also take a step back and understand how you're emitting yourself across the project and towards people, and making sure it's not confrontational. It's being able to just de-stress. And maybe this is a good segue, is managing stress, talking and how to really handle yourself in stressful situations, right? Because I have my own ways, which I could go into, but I was curious to know how, because we talk, and,
sure.
And there are times where we need to vent to each other. We do often, sure. Right? But let's say I wasn't around. What are some methods you would use to kind of just de-stress and just revisit things more with emotions detached from the scenario? By the way, your video froze again. If you want
damn it.
If you want to restart it again, it's up to you. But you have a better face here.
Thanks, bud.
Your face was like pretty chill.
Yeah, you kind of broke up for like a couple seconds there, but I was just like, I'll keep my face frozen just in case. Anyways, okay, so to answer your question, honestly, like my manager has been great. I think because of our relationship, I've been able to speak with him pretty frankly about stuff sometimes. Really more just voicing oftentimes just like frustrations with the way certain things are going or being done, but again, at the end of the day, it's like you never want it to be, personal, because it's never personal.
Mm-hmm.
But it really is just like talking about the things that are bothering you, just to kind of get it out. But then at the same time, it's also good to discuss about things that maybe you could do to make things better. From your sort of small part that you contribute, right? I guess at work, yeah, it's really just like sometimes it helps to talk to friends that you have maybe in other roles or even other projects, because then they're, a little more disconnected from the situation. And they can always provide some actually pretty surprising insight sometimes. And then sometimes if you really need to, just kind of step away from what you're doing, get a coffee, go for a walk, just kind of clear your head a little bit. That's kind of it. I don't know. I don't really have like, I guess it's like general stuff, just go exercise or something, do something fun that you like to help get your mind off things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me, again, it's like on a personal level, sometimes it's hard to disconnect these things, because I consider myself still relatively new to the industry, and I still, as we all do, like I care a lot about what we're doing, and it's hard not to get like a little in too deep. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No,
sometimes.
I know exactly what you mean, man.
Yeah, because ultimately, at the end of the day, like you want this thing to be awesome, and I think, again, with any creative endeavor, it's like you're like, okay, this is what we have, and then, but in the back of your mind, like, oh, we could have had this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always something that you just have to sort of like temper, expectations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the thing. Biggest thing for me, honestly, is really just like, just talk it out. Talk it out with people you trust. Talk it out with people that, your friends, and just talk it out.
Absolutely. I think the first thing is you need to feel comfortable with your manager. Right. Make them feel, as a manager, you have to make sure that you make your team feel like you're approachable.
Mm-hmm.
I know me personally at times where like I've just been bogged down with so much work. Sometimes I have this aura of don't talk to me right now aura, right?
Yeah,
Headphones on, I'm working at it. And that at times has led to, some of my teams like, okay, I don't want to disturb Mike right now. And to me, when I found out about that, I wanted to be able to change that right away. Right. So making sure that you're able to talk to your managers about things that are really stressing you out is really important. Like you said, talking to people, it doesn't need to be just friends, but like friends for sure, because they kind of can help empathize for you, but also provide a pretty good objectivity about a situation since they're pretty detached from it. So that really helps as well. So I would consider just talking to people. Usually, like Norm vents to me, I vent to Norm. I probably vent to Norm more often than he vents to me, but here and there, right? It depends.
Let's say 50-50.
Okay, it's 50-50.
50-50.
But that's super important, right? Communication is when I look at things, I always try to make sure I look at it objectively as well. looking at things with emotion is all subjective in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then you really, once you remove the emotions, you can start to analyze things from an objective perspective, and that's super important when you're working games, because let's say I want to do something, but director is like, no, I don't agree with this, but you know, you feel like, no, I think this is right, but of course at the end of the day it's a director call.
Yeah.
And then it's for me specifically, it'd be taking a step back and really like understanding, okay, why is this decision being made? What are the pros and cons for this? And honestly, if it gets to the point where you bring up valid, I guess, cons or valid negative, how should I say this? Valid points or reasons behind why it may be a bad idea to do this, they will take you seriously too, right?
That's true.
So I don't want to go off too far on a tangent about stress, but yeah, taking a walk. Oh my god, taking walks are so important. I don't drink coffee much, but lately I have been. But just being able to just take a walk and just zone out. No one's gonna yell at you for taking a 15-minute break unless you're in like a mandatory meeting and you decide to leave, right? Like, don't do that.
Exactly.
But like when you find that you have a slot in your busy calendar to just take a breath, message a friend, and be like, hey, do you want to go grab a coffee? That's usually all it takes to really just neutralize yourself. You neutralize the emotions and try to come back to your desk with a more steady mentality with the task at hand that you're about to return to.
Right. Yeah, it just gives you like, it's funny too, because like I think about this sometimes where it's like you definitely have those moments where like there's so much going on and it's easy to feel, I think, overwhelmed. Again, it's funny because I think back to like previous non-game dev jobs that I had, and like I never had those feelings then, because it's like I'm just working like in an office, right? But here it's like it's for better or for worse, it's a roller coaster, right? So sometimes you got to hit pause. Sometimes you just got to get off that roller coaster for a sec.
But
and then
a lot of the times too, man, I think me and you both, we're very passionate about what we're doing. We're very passionate, and that's why it's hard to not get attached to something, especially if you, let's say, worked months on something and a director comes and says, hey, like, actually let's shift this around and let's take this a different direction. It's like, in a way, it feels like it's a gut hit. It's a hit to your gut. It's like, but I put my all into this, right? And and that hurts, and it's gonna happen. Unfortunately, it's gonna happen. You're gonna get these moments during your career, many moments where it's just like, no, actually, sorry, we're gonna have to change things around, and that's where you really need to face adversity and approach it smartly. Because how you handle criticism is one of the most important things in being a game dev. Right? It's not about being so defensive. It's about, I understand what you're saying. And again, listening is one thing, but understanding is completely different. So understanding what the goal is behind, let's say, a decision being made, and then seeing how your work is, how your work is incorporated into that and why things had to change, as an example. And just think of it from the game, right? Like you said, working your way back. Does this benefit the game at the end? And a lot of the times when the direction change is being made, at first emotions are like, yeah, that hurts. But when you think about it, it's like, but yeah, they have a point. A lot of times that happens. And it's like, once you kind of get to that earlier, you'll be in a better position with having more time on your side, because time is the most valuable currency in life, to be able to make a decision and start pivoting on plans to still deliver with the new direction and quality.
For sure.
That's probably some advice that I would like everyone to just keep in their back pocket at all times.
Yeah, like I think, again, I guess not getting like what you're mentioning with direction change, like we there was definitely a moment where my team was faced with something like that. And I think, again, like you're saying, it's a gut hit, right? Like for sure, like, you get that feeling where like, man, like we were working on this for so long and like it was actually really good, blah, blah, blah. But again, the key is like you give yourself time and the team time to sort of process. Like, again, it's not like, yeah, just shovel those feelings down and just pretend like it didn't happen. Obviously not. But you give yourself time, you give yourself, the team some time to kind of digest that. Mm-hmm. And then really it's trying to bring everyone back together to be like, okay, this is where we are. And now we got to get here. And then let's just hammer out this new plan. Let's go. Mm-hmm. And then maybe that's easier said than done. I think I'm very fortunate to be on a team and have a team that's pretty resilient. But yeah, it's tough, but yeah, definitely it's again, that's another part of being a production manager, I think, is really just to try and get everyone, back on board.
Absolutely.
Right?
And it's the buy-in, right? I think this is where, let's say there is a direction change, it's very imperative for a director to help communicate the decisions being made, right? Because buy-in is super important to to getting the team to really adapt like that, right?
Yep.
Because once they understand and are with you, despite the amount of work that is ahead of them, if they could buy into that and understand, like, yeah, this is gonna make our stuff better, it will do wonders for the team morale.
Yep.
Yeah, that's super important, man. Sorry.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of going on what you were saying before, like, you have to manage your own emotions and feelings because your team is obviously going to feed off of that, whether you want it to or not. And I think, it's again, you have to be careful about being negative. And I'm not saying don't ever be honest about things, because like, if there's one thing I know, my team obviously has more development experience than me, and they've all been doing this for longer. And they can smell bullshit coming like a mile away, right? So again, it's like you need to be honest with them, but in a very objective way, like as objective as possible.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I'm not saying don't be negative, but you just have to be careful.
Absolutely. So I know there's a lot of stress that comes with game dev, right? But I've said this before: is some of the most challenging moments provides the most rewarding moments in our career. And I know you probably have like a pretty, we have these little wins where, like we were saying, I think offline, that just seeing things come together is a win in itself, right? Because
for sure.
Sometimes it's super blurry, right? It's like you see the light at the end of the tunnel, but everything's refracting. It's not as clear, but you're like, okay, let's trust this decision. Let's just keep working at it together. Then eventually, once you get to the finish line and you're at the end of the tunnel, you see what you've delivered, and it's like, oh, I'm pretty impressed, right? Like, you see, it's that rewarding moment that you really get out of game dev. But what would you be able to point out probably one of the most rewarding or best experiences you've had so far in game dev in your career as a PC PM?
Sure. I think it definitely came on this project. I'm just trying to figure out how to talk about it in like a condensed way. But I remember it was last year for 2019 E3. So that's when we were showing the game off to the world, and even a bigger part of Ubisoft, for the first time. And I remember, so my manager at the time, he was the production manager for the missions team. And he came to me and he's like, hey man, we're putting together like a stage demo. So this is the thing, or I guess the asset, for lack of a better term, that we're going to show on the stage, the UB stage, for the press conference. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And he's like, yeah, like basically it's going to be kind of like a mission, and we need to put it together. And he's like, I'd like you to take care of it. I'm like, okay. Obviously, I was terrified.
No pressure.
No pressure. But honestly, it was a ton of hard work, a ton of very long hours, but in the end, it was like a relief almost that like it came together, and then admittedly, you know, I saw some of the comments and stuff online, and just from people around the studio. It's just like I think people were really happy with how it turned out, and it made like a really big impression. And I think, you know, going back to what I was saying, like when I shipped Watch Dogs 2, like that was one thing that I was disappointed in not having, right? And then, so, you know, again, across the project, like there's obviously many moments where I'm like, oh, cool, like, you know, I helped make this thing. But like this one especially, like knowing that like it was, I think, seen by like millions of people, you know, featured on a live stage and like an E3 press conference, like that was pretty mind blowing. And I was fortunate enough to be in LA when that happened, and that was it was pretty emotional. It was pretty awesome. Not gonna lie, it's pretty great.
What are some awesome takeaways from your E3 experience?
My favorite thing actually about E3, honestly, is that like that's one of the few times I feel like on the project where everyone has like a singular drive and goal. Like, remember how we talked about like managing priorities and stuff? It's like, well, this is 1 and 2. Like, nah. Like E3, it's like number 1 with a bullet, and like that's it. Like everyone, it's E3 time. Let's go. And it was awesome. Like again, I remember it was kind of insane to think back on. Again, just at like the breakneck pace at which everything had to be done. But because again, I guess maybe a lot of people don't know this, but like, you know, for E3, like the team is kind of, you know, they're making assets for this presentation while making the regular game, right? So it's just like additional, you know, work and you know, our admittedly stress and stuff that people are putting in it. But again, we always want to show something that's like really cool and awesome. So everyone's working like doubly hard to get it done. And just the number of teams, I think, that really helped get everything together. Again, like there's the UI team, obviously, you know, some of the people from the missions team. We had the narrative team writing some of the dialogue, audio team recording the lines, cinematics. Oh my god, the cinematics in that review were really great. The animation team, obviously, shout outs. QC team, I had one dedicated QC tester. His name's Joe. Shout out to Joe, who is incredible. Just I'm probably missing people, but again, or you know, like even the team that's working on the engine and just like general graphics improvements and just making everything look just really, really great. On top of the level artists as well. Like there's so much love and just so much effort that goes into it, so that when it finally gets out there, it's a relief, but also like you're nervous but excited to see how people are going to react to it, right? And I think that's the biggest thing. And I think we were really fortunate to have people just really respond to it positively, and I think that was just really, really great.
Yeah, man. I think being in Toronto, it's like I was just glued to the whole feedback portion of our reveal and everything, and it was the first time in my career where I felt like we accomplished something. Okay, sorry, that sounds super negative. But generally with E3, there's a lot of negativity that does come out. But I guess at the time, work was, you know, like our project was in a stressful period, and you know, it's hard to, when you're so in the trenches, you don't realize you don't see the big picture, and you don't realize what the product you have, right? And that's where I was just like, so like it was also an unfortunate moment in my life as well. So there's a lot that was happening. And then being able to just see the positive feedback, the reactions from the gaming community was awesome. Like it got to a point where like I was even crying because I know how much work I put myself through for this, and in conjunction with other life moments I had during at the same time, it was very emotional. And to see that win, it's I wouldn't say it's a little win. To me, it was a big win because it almost justified what I was doing.
Right.
And that's one thing I really enjoyed about our E3 showcase last year is that justification, and it really helped with the team morale overall. Like the entire team was in a similar mind state where they just were almost burnt out because we're like you said, trying to develop assets for production and some key assets for like E3, and we're investing a lot of time into it, because we're all passionate about what we're trying to deliver, and then to just see that, it just makes it all worth it in the end, right? And that's what it comes down to, is just getting that. It is justification to me. Is you didn't waste your time doing this, right? So that's super important. But when you were in LA, were there like a moment or a few moments where it was kind of like cool moments just being there at E3?
Yeah, like I think you'd see like live streams and stuff in the past, but then like actually like being in the theater, where Clint, our creative director, is presenting something, and then everyone in the audience, like granted there's a bunch of UB people there as well, but there's a bunch of like people from the media or fans and stuff, who are just applauding and just kind of losing their minds, which is kind of great. And then at that time too, like when we were at E3, like I was giving out demos every day, and that was.
Oh, sorry, we lost you. And that was you're giving out E3 demos.
That was really like marketing. Sorry, was that Mike?
Sorry, you got cut off. You said, well, your video camera also froze.
Ah, damn it.
So if you want to restart it, but what you were saying was, you were about to start about doing the you were starting about the demos.
Oh, right.
Starting off with those, yeah.
Yeah, so one of the really cool moments, I think, was really just interacting with certain fans and people from the media, just to really show them the project, the game that we've been working on for so long, and finally being able to talk about it more at length and just kind of see them be, I think, delighted and surprised in a good way, just at what we've been doing, right? Because I think, for better or for worse, I think sometimes there's an opinion, let's say an online opinion, about some of the games that we make, and I think what we are doing at the end of the day is pretty special. I know I'm a little biased, but
no, it's special. It's pretty special.
Yeah, it's pretty special. So I think having people kind of echo that back to you is it feels really good. Feels awesome. Feels great. And just seeing people smile and just be happy and just be engaged, and ask questions, was really great. And I think, definitely my favorite thing about E3 also is that, so I had been to E3 previously, not with a company, but just by myself. And I think it was really cool because I got to meet people who helped contribute to things that I love. And this time, especially because I was giving demos, there was actually some people I got to give demos to who I was actually, like I was how do I say?
A fan?
Yeah, like I was a fan of their work, right? So it was really cool to be like, hey man, like, I know you don't know me, but like I'm a really big fan of your work. Here's the demo. And it was really nice, for them to sort of get that validation, and then at the same time, like I kind of get the validation too, right? So it's like a nice little back and forth. So it feels good.
I remember you told me about that one influencer that we definitely follow, and I'm like, oh, that was awesome.
Yeah. No, it was great. But yeah, so moments like that are really great. Celebrating with the team, all that stuff is great. I'm saying great a lot, but
it's fine.
But it's just a really incredibly satisfying feeling because you you realize how much time and effort just goes into making these things, right?
Yeah.
I think that's probably like my biggest takeaway since starting game dev is just how much time and effort it takes to make anything.
Absolutely.
And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand that, but whatever. But at the same time, it's like we spend so much time and effort on these things because we care, because we want them to be good. I mean, no one ever wants to ship a bad game, right? So you always want to try and make it the best thing you can.
Absolutely. And that's a great way to really kind of conclude this entire episode, right? Is at the end of the day, we are game devs who are very passionate about what we do. And we'll do as best of a job as we can in order to deliver quality and provide like people all over the world an experience that is enjoyable, right?
Yeah.
That's what's really
sure.
important. And I'm glad, Norm, you were able to find your way into this industry. You had a passion for games, like you were saying, but you started off with, I'm going to do the typical. I'm not gonna say, is it white collar? I'm not sure what it is, but
yeah, just like your kind of typical / stereotypical like office job.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
But you know what? You were able to find a path to that eventually led you into game dev. Yeah. And I'm very happy to have met you. And
bud.
Because of that, I do dedicate this sneaker to you in terms of your journey.
Look at that.
And let me explain this. So what this is what we call this is the Jordan 1 Nike SB collaboration, where it's the Defiant LA to Chicago. Okay. So when you hear LA to Chicago, basketball wise, what are the two things that really come to mind with LA and Chicago? Right.
I mean, obviously the Lakers and the Bulls.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So what's awesome about this is there is a reason why this is called LA to Chicago. Because at surface level, it's purple and gold, which are the Lakers colors. But what's awesome about these is that you could rub the paint off. The yellow becomes black. The purple becomes red. And it eventually turns into this.
Yo, that's for real?
Actually. Absolute facts.
What? That's crazy. That's awesome.
So this is the outer layer.
Yeah.
And then it becomes this once you could use like rubbing alcohol or whatever to wipe off the exterior layer of paint.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm dedicating this to you is because this is your journey, right? There are two stages in your career. You have this layer, which was, of course, your financial background, your kickstart to your professional working career, right. And then eventually your true colors. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what it comes down to.
That's cool.
Also my favorite shoe of all time. So
pretty dope.
The Chicago one is what they call this.
That's cool.
Chicago colorway. But yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. I think the journey, again, it's a unique one. When I asked you to come on here, I explained to you why I felt you were one of the perfect candidates for this show, is because I want to be able to expose to the listeners that, hey, you don't need to, if you have a passion for something, specifically if it's game dev, but in general, if you have a passion for something, don't ever feel like it's too late to enter it, or I didn't take the right steps to get there. There's always a way to live out your dreams, right? And if this is a dream for you, Norm, you're living it right now. And yeah, man, congratulations on getting to where you are today. I'm really proud of you, having known you since you were in the finance department. But I'm proud to see how you've developed here as a production manager. And thanks, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more because, yeah, you got the stuff. You got stuff.
Thanks, bud. No, I appreciate that a lot. It's always nice to talk about myself, I guess. But no. I appreciate you taking interest in my story. Obviously, again, it's always very nice to to be able to talk to you about not just obviously work and game dev and stuff, but just being pros in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's this has been a wild ride. I'll be honest, I've never worked at any company for this long, so I think that's definitely a testament to not just the position, but also the studio itself. It's at times it's incredibly stressful and even at times frustrating, but I think the satisfaction and just the I guess the fulfillment that I get is definitely outweighs that by like a mile.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, anyways, but yeah, thanks for having me on, man. It was fun to chat. It's fun to talk about. Some shop.
Of course. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. You are welcome anytime. Actually, in fact, tune in next week as Norman's going to be joining us as we're talking about why Animal Crossing is not the best game for the Switch.
Whoa! I can't be on that.
I'm such a hater.
Disagree.
I just can't stand having to have another mortgage, a virtual mortgage. Are you kidding me?
But the fun thing is that you can actually pay them off quickly. That's the real talk.
Awesome. That's how we end the episode. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Hope you guys learned a lot. Tune in next time to hear this Sneakerhead talk game devs with the game devs.
Thanks, Mike.
See you guys.